Hey guys, it's Sadie from Sadie Saves the Day. I'm here again with another Zorn video. We talked last time about using Anders Zorn's palette in gouache, and now we're going to talk about using it in watercolors. So when you want to translate the Zorn palette into watercolors, there ends up being a lot of strange things happening. So first of all, Zorn worked in oils, which is an opaque medium. Watercolors are not opaque. His palette is only 4 colors, 2 of which are white and black, the 2 colors that are often not used in a watercolor palette. So what are you supposed to do? I just decided not to use the white because the white of the page I think is perfectly fine to use for watercolors because that is what's traditional. But I decided to experiment with what color you could possibly use for black. So I have 4 different color wheels here. One of them is for using with Payne's Gray, the other with Indanthrone Blue, another with Lamp Black, and a last one with neutral tint. I don't actually own a neutral tint, so I just mixed a neutral tint to see how that would work out. So the yellow is the yellow ochre from Core, and the red is the Pyro Scarlet from Core. So I worked on all 4 of these simultaneously because the 2 of the colors were the same, so you can just put them down. And the only difference is the color that's standing in for the blue or the black color. So I wanted to see what difference that made, what I liked better, and show you guys what happened. And in the little boxes in the middle, I actually didn't end up doing anything because when there's 3 colors, you've done all the mixtures. So I just wanted to show you some of the peachy colors that you can make. So starting with the Lamp Black, you can see that is a pretty black. And then you mix it with the red, it gets a kind of burgundy purplish color. Not too bad. Obviously, it's not going to be the most saturated. Then when you mix it with the yellow ochre, you get a sort of greenish color. It's kind of like mossy green, maybe khaki. That's better than I expected it to have a range of colors, to be honest. So next is Payne's Gray. And this gets a much more vivid purple, actually. Obviously, because the Payne's Gray is quite blue. And then as you mix it with the yellow, you get some pretty decent greens. And you actually even kind of get a brown if you mix enough yellow in, so that looked promising to me. It looks much more vibrant than the Lamp Black. The Indanthrone Blue was the first thing that I assumed would be the good one to try. You get these really nice deep purples, and you actually get really nice deep greens, just really like under the sea sort of greens. And you also get those khaki greens if you want them. So I just mixed up some of the different kinds of reds that you get when you mixed the Payne's Gray and the Scarlet together. Just so that you can see different things that are happening. Okay, so finally we've got that neutral tint that I mixed up. And you can see the sort of green that you get there. It's very obvious that you're going to be leaning and going very quickly into the browns, which I actually liked a lot. And when you mixed it with the red, you actually got a really nice purple. So to be honest, this was actually my favorite color to work with, but I didn't want to mix up a whole batch of neutral tint. But if you have neutral tint or you don't mind mixing it up, I would suggest going for that. Outside of that, there's the Enanthrone Blue, which is almost cheating because you have the entire range of colors, and I decided not to go with that one. I felt like part of the idea was to have a more desaturated color and more realistic color, so I felt it was a little too vibrant for what I was going for. And I didn't actually like the Lampback that much, but you can look at all of them and see what you think is the best. But for the rest of this, I ended up going with the Payne's Gray. So what I'm doing now is just doing a continuous mixing chart with the different colors, since there's only 3 colors. This is mixing the yellow ochre with the Payne's Gray. And you see that it runs from this bright golden yellow into browny greens, into deep forest greens, and then finally getting over to the deep dark blue side. Now it's the Pyro Scarlet with the Payne's Gray, and it goes from this vibrant red into these deep warm browns and basically into straight black. I tried diluting some of them so you can see some of the colors. There's like a little bit of purplish in some of the colors. It's very nice. Next is the yellow ochre with the Pyro Scarlet, and it goes from the golden yellow ochre into these sort of salmony peachy colors, and finally into these very vibrant oranges. I'm just showing you some different colors that are in the mixture that are on my palette. So this is a portrait of Mai Ayim. She was an Afro-German poet who lived in Berlin, and there is actually a street there named after her. Unfortunately, she died at a very young age of suicide, but while she was alive, she was an advocate for Afro-Germans. So I wasn't really sure how this was going to turn out. I've never used this palette in watercolors before. I figured it should probably be fine, but I wasn't sure. And the first layer is just a mix of the yellow ochre and the pyro with just a touch of the Payne's Gray. And then the next layer, I add just a bit more Payne's Gray to darken it and dull it down a little bit more. And this palette was really easy to work with. You just follow the same principles as with the gouache palette. If you need it to be warmer, add red. If you need it to be lighter, put more water. If you need it to be darker, add the Payne's Gray. If you need it to be yellower, add the yellow ochre. Really simple. At first I worried that it would be a little bit too tricky to mix browns, but this palette just obviously leans towards browns to begin with. That is definitely not an issue. And you can see I'm starting out with really light colors. These colors also layer over one another really nicely. If you haven't seen the last video and you're wondering why there's another portrait to the side there, that was the portrait that I did for the gouache version of the Zorn palette. And that is a Brazilian activist named Marielle Franco. And if you want to see her whole portrait, you can see the gouache Zorn palette video that I did. So if you're really having troubles with making unrealistic skin tones, this is also a great palette for watercolor. What I like about it also is that you're able to get darker skin tones, but you don't have to worry about the granulating aspect, because a lot of people use granulating colors for darker skin tones, and that ends up looking really weird. But with all of these colors, none of them are granulating, at least not the versions that I'm using. So you can go light and dark without worrying about that at all. Also, a lot of people use darker skin tones with a lot of black in it, and that can also deaden the color. So if you are able to use without using a straight black, that also helps out with getting more realistic skin tones. So any kind of combination of an earth yellow, a warm red, a blue leaning black will work. You don't have to have these exact colors. Now see, this part, I basically thought, where are the areas that need more red in it? And I just put it there. What parts are warmer? Her cheeks, around her lips, around her nose. I don't have to think, what red am I going to use? There is only one red. You don't have options. Unfortunately, I skipped. I just put a wash of yellow ochre all over everything, and that got it much closer to her actual skin tone. And for these darks, I'm doing mixtures of the Payne's Gray and this dark brown, which I've mixed up over the course of this painting. I was a bit worried that the Payne's Gray would end up making everything look very dead, but it doesn't have that problem. Or at least not with this Payne's Gray. That's the thing about Payne's Gray and other pre-mixed neutrals. All of the different brands have entirely different formulas and they can operate in entirely different ways. So you need to check what version that you have and if it works for you. I had never used any other Payne's Gray before, but I'm just absolutely in love with Core's Payne's Gray right now. So just like the gouache portrait, this is just a really simple sketch. Not super detailed, just kind of wanted to demonstrate the palette for you guys. I love that she had these huge gold earrings. And just as easily as I was able to get these very desaturated colors for the skin, I'm able to get a really nice saturated orange for her turban. And because everything is made using the same colors, it totally matches with everything else. And I just used straight up Payne's Gray for her shirt. And what I really love is that it just gives you this very harmonious look. You don't have to worry about whether you use too many colors or if they go together. They definitely go together. And it doesn't necessarily look like, and it doesn't feel like I was limited by my color choices. Thank you guys for watching. I hope that this helped any of you who are having troubles with doing skin tones. There are a lot of different ways that you can do skin tones. This isn't the way that I always use to do skin tones in watercolor, but I think that it is a really great way to do it. And if you wanted to have just a small palette to go around with you, or if you're just having trouble and you want to make it a lot simpler, because this definitely makes it a lot simpler, I would think to try this out. Or even if you already have your own way, it's always fun to just try out a new method for doing skin tones and painting different subjects. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you, thank you, thank you to my Patreons. You guys are awesome and you make me smile. And I'm planning on cooking up some new stuff for my Patreons exclusively. So head on over there if you want to be able to see that. Hope that you guys like this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.